Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Decentralized Chain and bringing you the latest news, reviews and blockchain tech. So today we are going to be looking at Merculet ICO. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but we're going to have to call it Merculet throughout the process of this particular review. Now, before I get into that, what I do want to say is give a massive shout out to all my recent subscribers and my subscribers who have been with me since day one. It really means a lot, and my channel has been growing quite significantly over the last week or so with some of the latest reviews that I've done. So I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the likes, and more importantly, I appreciate the comments and obviously trying to drive some of that conversation as well in that space and help educate others. I've had some good questions asked on a number of videos, and so I really like that. So thank you to my subscribers. Now guys, let's get into this review. Now, Merculet basically aims to elevate the decentralized commercial civilization and to pioneer the arrival of the internet of value for mankind. Guys, this says it all. It is an absolute winner, and we are going to the moon. If you understood what that meant, that is. Okay, so what that really actually means in everyday speak is that it's basically going to tokenize the attention of internet users. Is going to repackage it, and it's going to offer it to entrepreneurs and reward the user for it. So what we need to do is actually understand a bit more about this space. Now, if you look at the current model using two of the largest attention grabbing apps in the marketplace today, that's right, Instagram and Snapchat. Now, according to Forbes magazine, Instagram is set to hit $10 billion in revenue by 2019, and Snapchat will hit $3 billion. Now, those figures are huge, and what we all know is that the revenue which is basically generated is actually, the sale revenue that's generated is really the sale of ad space and user data for those two particular apps. And so what makes that data and ad space so valuable? It ultimately is the user created content, which then drives others to view and curate content, okay, ultimately donating their attention capital, and that's what we're leveraging here, the attention capital, to Instagram and Snapchat. So those users basically who create, who view, who are basically curating content are not getting paid for something that is worth billions of dollars. Now, it's not to say those who are creating that content are not getting paid. I suppose that's slightly misleading. They are, if, for example, they're asked to sponsor a trainer, or they're asked to sponsor a particular, say, sunglass combo or hat or brand, and they obviously get paid through sponsorships that way, but they're not necessarily getting paid on a daily basis when they curate content on their devices. And so this is where Merculet comes in. The idea is that they're going to change this space, and they're going to do that by using the blockchain and turning all of that information into value for both the user and business. And ultimately what they're going to do is they're going to tokenize the user's attention, and the businesses will analyze the value of their attention and reward them accordingly. And so at that point, what happens is Merculet will convert and value attention using their own proprietary attention value network, which is ultimately going to be the blockchain service, and its user attention value assessment system that's built into that. And so the system will use those interesting multi-token mechanisms. So they're going to be working on a two-token front with the user attention token, which is what they're going to call the UAT, and the main token of the ecosystem, which they're calling MVP. Now, I don't personally like the MVP acronym because within the space we use MVP for minimum viable product, but here MVP is the actual token that will be traded on exchanges, and the UAT is the token that's going to be used within the ecosystem. And sometimes the reason why we see this type of dual token usage also helps to balance out the actual cost in terms of what tokens are being traded for on the exchange, and then ultimately being allowed to create that kind of liquidity within the ecosystem of that blockchain as well, by having a separate token that isn't necessarily pegged to the external dollar value of that token. So let's dig a little bit deeper and understand truly what the solution is that they're looking to provide. Now, it comes in a number of stages, and I'll go through it from the very beginning so you actually understand what the user attention token element is, and then we'll go and finish up on the actual platform itself in terms of how the full circle is completed. Now, first and foremost, in terms of seeing it as the big picture, you've got various businesses out there. So you've got game dApps, you're going to have video dApps, news dApps, travel, what have you. Now, within those spaces, what's going to happen here is that we have a supply side and a demand side. So the supply side are going to be those supplying the ultimate games, the videos, and the news. And then the demand side is going to be those, such as you and I, who are then looking to consume that content, consume, view, create, etc. All of those elements within there. So that's where the two sides meet. You have a supply and a demand, and obviously demand is going to be for the user's attention. Okay, and as you can see, it's a complete circle here. You know, you could potentially be going into a game and be rewarded with candy. You could be going into a video app, being rewarded with candy there, or ultimately you can then be going into looking at the game side and the news side, and from there you may, as a business, want to know what that share of big data is from there. What's the demographic of those playing that game? What's the demographic of those reading those particular news articles? And similarly, it kind of goes all the way through. You know, you've got news, you've got people creating news and then getting credit for creating that news. And so all of that is ultimately what we call the user attention side. It is a supply and a demand of services back and forth. Now, if you take that one step further, what that actually means is when somebody is interacting with a particular content element here, it could be a comment that they're making, it could be a sharing and obviously disseminating that through the internet, it could be liking, saying that you ultimately like it, or other user behaviors that kind of fall into that category, like dislikes, for example. And that then generates a certain amount of user attention value, okay? And what you then need to understand is there are two token elements within this overall framework. The first one being the user attention value, and then the second one being MVP. So let me break this down a bit more. In terms of looking at the ecosystem, what you can see in the background behind me, you've got the dApps for foods, you've got dApps for games, videos, shopping carts, etc. Now, all of those dApps, when you interact with it within this particular ecosystem, the Merculet ecosystem, you are ultimately paying in a way with UAT. Okay, that is how you're recognizing the user attention value through that. It's the UAT that's generated. Now that UAT is specifically for that ecosystem. It's a two token system here. UAT is what's used to generate that user attention value, and MVP is what's used to trade that out into an alternate tender or currency. Okay, and that also in a way provides a balance between the price of MVP and UAT within the ecosystem, because ultimately if you kind of just have everyone buying and sort of curating content and being paid for it with MVP, if there is a big shift in price on the exchanges, then that value goes up and down. Whereas if you have the UAT element, you have a consistent value within the ecosystem, but then when you want to move out at some point, then you have the MVP that you convert it into and trade on exchanges, and that way you can provide almost to a certain extent a liquidity within the ecosystem itself. It's quite common. I've also seen it with other ICOs as well, certainly within the AI space. They also have this two type of token usage as well, in terms of making sure that one doesn't devalue the service being provided within the ecosystem as a whole. Now, as we then sort of move on and move up higher, so we've kind of started on the lower level and we're slowly making our way up to the very top, where we're going to end up on the internet section. Here, this is just really a general graphic to kind of show you that you have the open content platform, which has the access and the high quality, and then the users within that which is the sort of bluish piece element within there, they're the ones that have the token incentive. So the UATs, the users will get paid in that, the apps will receive that, and then that then feeds through right to the very top. And when we say right to the very top, what we mean is ultimately the internet. So you will have massive internet users at the very top level, and then as we move down, you have the enterprise specific elements. So these are going to be your news articles or your news sites. It's going to be your gaming, your fitness activity apps, your video content. That enterprise level will interact with the internet asset layer, and this is where the Merculet blockchain will reside. And the reason it resides there is ultimately they're also looking to provide this cross-chain capability. So what you can see is further down, you've got development works also in place to be able to actually interact with public chain asset layer. So that's going to be like your Ethereum, your EOS, for example. Now, the reason they're doing that is ultimately, if they choose to then use, let's just say, Ethereum as a sole layer to provide this type of functionality, then what you have in effect is gas fees, you can have service degradation, slowness, all of that, because this needs to be instant in terms of the flow of UAT and then the flow out to MVP. So by containing it within the internet enterprise and internet asset layer, the two, you're able to, they're going to be providing ultimately a gas-free service within their token, and they have that free-flowing, highly movable, scalable system internally. And then as they then look to move out and exchange out, then that's where kind of they have the development pieces in with the public chain asset layer to be able to become more cross-chain in the future. So that is really the solution at its crux in terms of how it works. So you have a UAT token for internal ecosystem value, and then those that get traded out for MVP, which is what you will then ultimately get on exchanges and during the ICO. Now, moving on, you might be thinking to yourself, right, well, that's great, but you know, how does that help someone who's always using YouTube, for example, or how does it help someone that's always using maybe Vimeo or any other content-based sharing application? How do I actually earn through this? How does this help me with Snapchat? How does this help me with Instagram? Now, one thing that we need to understand is this, from what I've understood so far, is a Chinese-based ICO. And as you would have seen in my previous review, specifically with Chinese-based projects, they tend to first and foremost roll out locally to their country. And so once again, it kind of goes out to, they are looking after their own first and foremost. And this is where this is kind of really going to shine. Now, moving on to the team itself, they are quite an impressive array of individuals with certain skills and strengths, certainly within the blockchain space overall. Now, if we kind of start with the founder, Ivan Zhang, he's known as basically China's Reid Hoffman, and he has quite a considerable background overall. He's one of the core leaders at the Hewlett-Packard HP China, HP Silicon Valley Data Management as well as Next Generation Data Center. So this individual clearly knows how, I'm going to say, the Internet of Things work, how the internet then relates back to enterprise blockchain applications, and then how data flows between those various applications as well. He's also the vice president of AdMaster for the research and development section as well. So he clearly has that background within that sort of advertising space, and then being able to utilize that knowledge set, which is ultimately what they're doing here, is to kind of use almost the ad space as a way to get in and get the user value attention token, and then use that to then link businesses and demand together to kind of ultimately proliferate whatever is going to be needed for that particular application. If we then sort of move further on and we look at the CTO, we've got Shen Zhuzhang. So over 12 years of experience within the IT space, but you know, globally renowned technology companies. He's worked previously at HP, SAP, EMC. So if you know your IT businesses, these are very large organizations, well-respected organizations within their space as well. As well as previously, he's also worked at AdMaster within the R&D team. So clearly these guys all seem to know each other. And then as we sort of go further down, we've got Jerry Gao, Once again, 10 years of experience within interface design, interaction design, internet and mobile product design. So clearly they are going to be designing something that should hopefully be quite pleasing to the eye as well. And as we then go further down, I'm not going to go through everybody, but ultimately they do have a significantly well-rounded team overall with a significant amount of technology background. They've got PHP, they've got Java, they've got JS, they've got .NET experience, Flash Builder experience, Hadoop scheduling. They have a significant amount of technology experience behind their back overall. And so that's what I certainly like to see. One thing I'm not necessarily seeing a lot of is I'm seeing a lot of CTO, I'm seeing a lot of tech, I'm seeing a lot of mobile development. I'm not seeing much in the way of marketing or somebody looking at that marketing space. I'm not seeing much in the way of sales and somebody looking at the sales space and how to grow that going forward. But saying that, one thing that we really should sort of bear in mind is they have some significant advisors on board which seems to look like they're fulfilling that particular area. And so if we then look at the advisors overall, we've got Xiaozheng Zhang. He is a professor at Stanford University, very well-renowned university overall. He's also funding chairman of the Dunhao Capital. So these guys are VCs, venture capitalists, investors. You've got Shen Bo. So those who don't know who Shen Bo is, he is the founder of BitShares. So clearly from within the blockchain space. Then as we move on, we've got Roger Lim. So those who don't know Roger, he's the founding partner of Neo Global Capital. So once again, VC capitals, but more specifically, he's an experienced angel investor within the blockchain space. He has been an advisor for Bluezell, which was a very successful ICO, QLink, CoinFee, Selfkey, The Key, and Tomocoin. Now, those are some significant names to have in your array of ICOs that you have advised, and so certainly he knows his ICOs, he knows what to advise, and he already has those links. So once again, what I really like to see is advisors within that space that are well connected, that understand how to grow companies, but more specifically those within the blockchain space are always a positive to me overall. Then as we move over, we've got Benjamin Tang, who's the founder of Alex. And so if we kind of think about it, and what we've talked about to date now within this review, is we're talking about content curation, apps, dApps, linking into various applications, videos, games, etc. And here, Benjamin Tang, for example, is the founder of Alex. And so this is looking and focusing on mobile gaming industry as well. And so they have well over 500 million consumers over market. So that by having that reach of users already, it kind of gives them the advantages they need in order to actually use that particular ecosystem and then ultimately work with these investors and advisors to push and promote that platform out further. So I certainly like the look of all of that. As we then move through the remainder of the individuals, Yao Fan Kui, he's the managing partner at Root Capital. So once again, another VC. We've got Iris Yin, so founding partner of Superhash Capital, another VC. She specifically looks at early and middle stage ICOs, well not ICOs, but early and middle stage investments. And so she can certainly help grow these guys from an early stage, help them through the middle stage, and then obviously ultimately into the larger stages as well. So they have a significant array of partners on board overall. And so I certainly like the look of all of this in terms of being able to grow and being able to really get usage and adoption of your platform, because that's the only way this is really going to work. Now, if we also then move on and have a look at the partners, one thing that I really did want to mention here is in terms of their partner space, they've got Alex, which is a platform that has a significant reach within the gaming industry, within the internet space as well. They've got over 50 million users, 3 million users. They're growing. They're significantly growing in a number of different areas, in a number of different applications as well, which has a significant user base. And that's kind of what you need. The idea here, remember guys, is that we are basically connecting supply and demand together for user attention. And that will then help ultimately drive the usage and adoption of whatever platform or content curators are trying to push. Now, the other bit that I kind of want to touch on here is that the really key one that I see here is Magic Wand. So Magic Wand, in this particular example, they have a significant partnership here with Magic Wand in terms of what they're going to do. So what Magic Wand does is they have clients across China, and they have a number of several international apps with more than 10 million daily live users and more than 10 million total users overall. And the content that it releases is able to cover around 130 to 200 million independent users, okay, and around 50 million to 8 billion page views through Magic Wand. And so these guys are looking at creating an SDK to really link into and leverage that user base from Magic Wand itself. That is huge in terms of content distribution. And if you then take that existing model that we were looking at earlier on and blow that up, that is going to be huge in terms of outreach. And they have these guys already as part of the partnership, as part of their launch overall. So I certainly like the look of this a lot. Yes, it might not go outside the walls of China, but certainly they have a huge user base to be able to leverage and to be able to grow within China first and foremost. Similarly, they also have partnerships with Toop. So these guys are kind of more like a lifestyle organization. And so here they have a reach to those users who will obviously look for a certain lifestyle product, high net worth individuals, and they're using this top site in order to be able to do that as well and proliferate some of that content out and also get that user and demand supply going in. And then last but not least, they've also got Solo SSP. Once again, it's around traffic. So these guys have access, they have daily exposure to over 500 million plus users, 600 million global users, corporate brands. So once again, they've got significant partnerships in terms of tying in the demand and supply overall. So moving on, let's actually have a look at the roadmap. So in terms of how this project's going to be delivering and what can we expect. So if we kind of have a look, we've got Q1, which is the perfect user attention based growth methodology. So this is really their white paper that's been released. And as we move into Q2, they're looking to basically get their MVP token on board. So this is really the building out of that infrastructure. They're looking to get a release out of the AVN system. So that's the overall architecture that they've got. So beta 1, and that's going to obviously include the UAV, user attention value token system, as part of that, as well as the content open product platform. So certainly by the end of Q2, we should have some significant steps towards seeing a product of sorts. Bear in mind that the whitelist has not yet been announced, so and nor has the token sale details been announced either. So it's one for you guys really to watch and monitor, follow on the Twitter, and I'll share those a bit later on with you as we go on in the review. Then we've got Q3, where they're looking to release the second beta and then really further develop that platform overall. So I suspect that they're going to be looking to maybe release their token sales somewhere between Q3 and Q4. Certainly not within Q2. It wouldn't make sense to me to do that until you've got something concrete that you can show and then ultimately drive that awareness and attention. And then as we then further go on, they will then further build out and do more technology refreshes and build out that platform overall. But certainly by the end of the year, we should be seeing a significant platform and some significant growth overall, because they're looking to develop and deploy 1.0 of that platform. So I certainly like a lot of what I'm seeing. But one thing to bear in mind is, for me, this is very China focused and very China heavy, but as you can see, the actual partnerships that they have and the advisors that they have on board, these guys have a significant outreach beyond just China. And certainly some of those partners that they're partnering with also have user bases in the millions, the hundreds of millions, which they can reach out to. And I'm sure that not all of them are going to be China-based overall. So looking at token distribution, they have around 10 billion MVP tokens pre-mined. Now from there, they have a soft cap of around 10,000 Ethereum and a hard cap of around 31,000 Ethereum. Now in the private sale, there is a 20% bonus, but in order to be eligible for that, you need to have a minimum contribution of 150 Ethereum. So guys, I suggest you dig deep into your pockets to find that. In terms of the public sale, minimum contribution is 0.1 Ethereum. Maximum you can have is 5 Ethereum. Now, with the private sale, one thing to bear in mind here is that there is a vesting period over 5 months, and 20% of your tokens will be released slowly over that period. So that's really good, because ultimately it does help stave off any type of dumping effect, and if it does, it certainly is in smaller batches rather than everything being dumped at once. So I certainly like the look of vesting periods and lockups within that space as well. I haven't seen much around what the lockup is for the team, but I suspect it's going to be something similar. If not, it should be much longer than that period overall. Now, in terms of just trying to understand what the monetary values are for a token, Ethereum currently, as of the 26th of March, is priced at $533. So that puts the hard cap of around 16.5 million, which is quite good. I quite like that. 10 billion tokens, 16 million hard cap. Clearly it's not a money grab here, so I certainly like the sound of that. And then that pretty much puts the price of one MVP token at half a cent. So once again, it's one of these ones where you can accumulate a lot, and if the project does very well and you get that global outreach and you can see a significant drive in usage and adoption, then this could work very well. I mean, this ultimately cuts out the middleman from taking in the sales, okay? Because what you are doing here is you're putting direct supply and demand in, with the end user being the business, and then you've got the actual owner at the front end, either being the content curator, the viewer, the sharer, the liker, and bringing those two together. So I certainly like the look of the token metrics. So talking about hype and moving on, so if we kind of go further down the page, they have a number of presences within Telegram, Medium, Bitcoin Talk, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, LinkedIn. So this is good. They're obviously reaching out to various marketing channels. And so if we kind of have a look at their Telegram, in terms of Telegram, they've got around 4,257 users, so that's good. And I suspect this will grow as this project gets more awareness. In terms of looking at Twitter, so their Twitter is around 732 followers. And once again, I'm sure this will grow as well as we get closer to a prototype or MVP product. Because certainly what a lot of people want to see now in this bear market is an ICO that has legs and is able to grow. Now, moving on, let's have our final thoughts in terms of what I think of this project. So overall, I've given it a 3. I certainly would like to rate it higher, to a 4, if they had more of a global outreach. I know in their partnerships they do, but I certainly would like to see something beyond and outside the walls of China. So I've given it a 3. But overall, even if they equally stay within China, they've got a huge outreach there, and clearly a big, massive user and adoption which they can tap into. One of the areas that I forgot to mention is that one of the partners is also responsible for WeChat. So WeChat is a huge social media Telegram-like platform within China, and heavily used as well. So that has millions of users overall. Prototype, I've given it a 0. I haven't seen anything to date. I haven't seen anything mentioned to date, but as I mentioned before, we are early stages on this project, and I'm expecting to see something certainly by the end of Q2, if not within the Q3 space. Team, I'm going to give it a 4. These guys are clearly well clued up in terms of what they're doing, in terms of what they know, blockchain experience, heavy tech experience, and years of experience behind them overall. Their advisors, I've given it a 4. They are all very well connected in terms of partnerships, very well connected in terms of advising previous successful blockchain projects as well. So I certainly like the look of that. In terms of token metrics, I've given it a 3 for the time being, just because I think the cap supply is very high overall, 10 billion tokens. But then again, the hard cap is only 16 million, so I quite like in terms of where they're going with that overall. I can understand why they have such a high supply of tokens, because ultimately they are reaching out to the hundreds and millions of users, and they obviously want to use that within the overall ecosystem to be able to trade and move that around and provide much more of that liquidity. So I can see it, but it does seem like a significantly high number, because ultimately you're almost bordering onto actual blockchain services as well, like your IOTA and your Cardano, for example. In terms of hype, I've just given it a 2 for the time being. What I do like is clearly they're moving out to a number of different channels, so certainly you'll see a lot more progress coming along the way. So anyway guys, I hope you've really enjoyed this review. I've certainly enjoyed doing it for you, and if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. More than anything else, please subscribe and share the video. And guys, if there's something you didn't like, please leave a comment in the description in the comments below, and I will certainly try and get back to you and improve the content in terms of what I can do for the next video. Thanks for tuning in guys, bye.